Welcome guys, welcome to today's show, and today it's all about the new camera from Arri. It's the Arri Alexa LF, which stands for large format. So I talk about sort of how I think the camera came about and why, in a way, Arri was forced to create this camera, because they're, if you kind of been following Arri and what they've been doing, I mean, they're a revolutionary kind of a camera, a company all the way back from the days of film. And even when it comes to digital, they've really, I would say, kind of paved their own way, and they really did create, I think, amazing cameras. So the first camera, the Arri Alexa Classic, now as it's known, in 2010, great camera, and it was, 1080p. It was actually slightly higher because of the way the Arri looks at basically also. Well, it's technically when you need more pixels or photo size, you would say, on a sensor. To derive with a better image, so their camera was actually 2.8K, and that in their basically calculations produced a perfect one-to-one sort of pixel image when it comes to 1080p cameras. But the big thing about them is, as Arri's always said, that it's not so much the resolution. Like 1080p, according to them, was good enough when it comes to resolution. It's to really get a good image. It comes down to the other things, characteristics like color, dynamic range, the highlight roll-off, and things like that. And they for sure had that nailed down even with their first camera, and they kind of kept on improving on that. One place where they didn't improve was the resolution. I mean, they did introduce the 65 Arri camera, which is kind of like a large, it's actually slightly larger than a 65 millimeter film camera image plane. So that's like a whole other camera system. That one's 6K. But otherwise, they've, their latest cameras were all 3.2K actually, and they just simply would, allow you an option to upscale to 4K. Now that was not good enough for some of these other basically demanding, I would say, film industry players, right? Like Netflix and Amazon being, I think, the key ones. And here I'm gonna let my brother join in on the conversation.
Hello, everyone.
So what do you think, Lucas?
What I think about, I mean, I'm not going to talk about the technical aspects of the camera.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like a big jump. It's like the kind of still using the same chip, right? The same sensor.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, but I mean, it's interesting in terms of like the big thing how
it came
decisions,
about, right?
like technology is being driven and so on. And usually it's consumers who drive, the technology, right? Like consumer demand. But here, the interesting thing is that it's really not the case, because I don't think people really like saying, like we need 4K. It's more like, I think it's more about, well, I don't want to I think it's a lot of it is driven by Amazon, by Netflix, and also by the TV manufacturers, right? Where all these companies, they want to offer you something new, give you a reason to either pay premium for the service or get a new TV set, and so that's what's been pushing, and so Amazon and Netflix, I guess, they're pushing that the 4K technology or resolution, and then that kind of, there's this effect on filmmakers or on cinematographers who are saying, well, we need to make 4K. Maybe like we are totally happy. Arri, we are totally happy with your 2.8 K camera, but actually now we do need it to satisfy our customers, our clients.
Well, to me, I guess the interesting thing is that it almost seems like they, like the market now, throughout longest years, basically cinema history, it was always the big Hollywood studios really that kind of drove the thing. So they kind of directed it more or less and pushed the technology and things like that. Whereas now it's interesting to see that the Hollywood studios were totally fine with the Arri Alexa line of cameras, and the Amiras. And, my opinion also, they're great looking cameras. And when it comes to resolution, they weren't really pushing for it. They were totally okay, scaling it up and all that stuff. But what I found interesting now is that it's these other companies now, internet companies, that are now actually pushing cinema technology, or pushing it, with the companies to come up with things, because that's where I guess most of the money is. So the fact that Netflix and Amazon, two main ones, that have this kind of a big power, because I was thinking about it. I was thinking, do really most Netflix users really care if it's 4K or not, or if it's really 4K or if it's upscale? They probably don't know. They don't care. But I mean, the way that Netflix goes is kind of one of their official statements that they released was that since they have this premium subscription service where they offer you original Netflix content that's all in 4K, then they expect that they basically that's the service that they provide and they're charging you extra for it. So because of that, they will not cut any corners and they will not basically create original Netflix content that's not technically shot in 4K, that's scaled up. So that's really the only reason. But I personally, do you think most of the customers would even know or care?
Well, like many people are watching on small, watching Netflix on small, many times on tablets or phones. So even and also many people actually don't have like good 4K, like good bandwidth, good enough bandwidth to get stream 4K. So it's really like future proofing for Netflix, because if they're going to they'll put up big amounts of money into these productions, so they want to make sure in 2-5 years those films still have a value, they will still play well on their platforms. So that's one thing. And also it's in terms of like this, there is this fringe maybe of the market that will be swayed because whether 4K is offered or not, right? Most people don't really care, but it's a nice thing to have, I guess. But I mean, I'm watching films like on Netflix, right? Like yesterday, I watched the American Made film you reviewed, and I have no idea whether it was in 4K or not. Now I have the 4K plan.
Well, that was actually shot on the Arri Amira, so it was 3.2K technically. Yeah.
All right, so I guess it wasn't 4K. It was upres, maybe, I don't know, but because looks beautiful, the film. The resolution, I have a 4K TV, and that's a 42-inch. In an average size living room. I mean, we were sitting 6, 8, maybe 8 feet away, probably 8-10 feet away. Like I cannot tell, whether it's 4K. Maybe in a way, sometimes it would be nice if there was like a marker or something on the screen. It is 4K because I don't even know is it 4K or not.
Uh-huh.
But so most people don't care, and I do have gigabit service, and so I should be able to get 4K stream. So I mean, I don't think most people care, but as an industry professional, you as a cinematographer, you're kind of forced to use it, and so that's what it is. I mean, that's in the end, that's what it is. That's what the clients want, and if you are a filmmaker making a film that shows your talents, it's probably not something you need to focus on making a 4K movie. But then, once you are in the industry and getting paid, then that's the standard, right?
Yeah, and I would say, like, when it comes to, I guess, to me, the most interesting thing, like I said, is kind of just how it all came about. The fact that it's being dictated, I guess, because of. It almost seems more like a marketing thing. Like, I'm basically Amazon, I guess, and Netflix wanted to be, because like you said, most customers probably don't even realize or care. Those film buffs and people like us probably will, but like cinematographers and stuff. But most consumers won't. So, but Netflix, it's like a selling point, and it's the same thing. Like I was at Best Buy yesterday, and I saw a sales guy, trying to sell somebody a TV, and basically, he's showing him two TVs, and the customer had no idea, no difference like between one TV and the other. And then the guy's like, well, this is 4K, and it has the the UHD, not the UHD, but the HDR, and this and that. And then the other guy goes, okay, and this one is what? Well, this one is 4K, but it's not like real 4K because it doesn't have H. And I was just like listening to him. And at the end of the day, it's funny because, first of all, the sales associate, he wasn't saying 100% truth. Whether he did it intentionally or not is another story. But at the end of the day, it was funny because the customer himself didn't really care. And then at the end, it seemed like his decision was swayed by the larger number. So the guy was like, well, here you have more colors and you have more resolution. So then the customer's like, all right, so that's better. Yes, that's better. Okay. You know what I mean? And to him, it was like, it was completely almost irrelevant if you think about it, because he didn't see the difference. So and it's Netflix is the same way. I mean, Netflix basically is selling people on, here you have this premium subscription service, you can get 4K content for 12 hours, and it's better. 4K is better. So most people will be like, all right, I guess I'll pay the extra things and I'll get 4K content. So because of that, they don't want to, the few people who might notice the difference, they don't want to be like, well, this technically isn't 4K, it's upscaled. So because of that, they're really sticking to their guns and saying, no, every content thing. And I think the way because I think some people maybe don't realize why Netflix, for example, has so much power. Is because if you think about it, the way films come about, right? Films are now, a lot of these, serious formats that are very like cinematic looking. You get a lot of, really talented filmmakers working on it, and a lot of DPs who love using the Arri system because, like I said, they're great cameras. But they were okay using them, like I said, on Hollywood films and things like that, or independent features. But whenever they were doing something specifically for Netflix, and here's the difference. I think some people are getting confused because some people I saw in the comments saying, well, Netflix technically does, have stuff there that's not 4K and or things that were shot on Arri cameras. And yes, they do. What you got to remember is the stuff that they're producing, the Netflix originals, and I think for the most part now Amazon also. Maybe you can correct me on that, Lucas.
Yeah, no, Amazon was actually pushing 4K even before Netflix.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I guess both of them, they're basically saying our stuff that we've produced, because basically Netflix and Amazon, they'll have things where they basically license, right? So somebody else produces it, a studio thing. So they'll get, if you should have, like I said, there's movies that were shot on cell phones that are on Amazon. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you have to get the Arri camera or whatever other camera that's approved by Netflix. You can get any camera you want, make a film on your own, and try to sell it to Netflix. If you get commissioned, or basically, you're working directly for Netflix, meaning they hire you to do a film or a series, that's when you'll have to meet their specifications. And so it would just so happen that there were some nice big projects that Netflix and Amazon commissioned, but and they hired some really talented filmmakers who they loved using the Arri cameras. But Netflix told them, you can't use it because it's not true 4K. And we did promise our customers you're going to be 4K. So that's really the only reason why all these cinematographers...
And so what would be the camera that they opted for before?
Mainly the Red cameras. The Red cameras. That's why Red, I think... Red has also great camera systems, but Red has been really kind of cutting into the market of Arris. And it's because... pretty much all the stuff that you see on Amazon and Netflix was shot on Arri cameras. There's some stuff that was shot on actually on Ursas and things like that, but majority of it was shot on the Red cameras, and that's the reason why. And a lot of those DPs didn't want to use Red; they wanted to use Arri. They loved that look, the wide dynamic range, the nice highlight roll of all that stuff, the color science behind it. So that's what they wanted, but they just couldn't because Netflix said, "Well, we're paying you money to do original 4K content. This isn't 4K." So you can't use that camera. And so I think that's my estimation, is like a lot of these filmmakers kept on probably, cinematographers, directors kept on, complaining about it and telling basically Arri, well, we'd love to have a 4K camera that we can actually own. First of all, that's a difference. Also, some people are wondering why not just get the Arri 65. Well, that one is not really a camera that you can buy. It's only rental only. Not that the other Arri cameras, if you guys want, are really affordable. Like if you're a beginner filmmaker, or even if you're an experienced filmmaker, most of the time you're going to be renting, right? Well, what's the starting price on that, Lucas?
Well, I only get the price. The camera is going to be released, delivered in March of this year, and like the basic is 74,000 euros. So that's a bit more in US dollars. So like, was it like 80,000 euros US? But like the better package with some, I think. It's probably paying more over 100,000 US, like wow, decent package, right?
Yeah.
So it's not something. It's for renting.
It's still for renting. Technically, some people will buy it, or some bigger production companies, but I think so. That's something to just keep in mind. But
one question here. Well, one comment and one question, Tom.
Yeah.
From Paul Hammond. Paul Hammond, thanks for the input. He says that Amazon doesn't demand 4K anymore. So that's what Paul says. I'm not sure. I'll be surprised. I'm surprised to hear that they wouldn't, because they're saying that they're letting the cinematographers decide, but they demand certain color space and color output, such as 4:4:4. That's what Paul says. So,
the last time I checked, which was 2 days ago, no, they still are requiring. So
I would be surprised. Why would they go back, right?
Yeah, that just doesn't make sense. And like I said, they have their premium service, so they're still requiring. It's just, don't get confused. When they acquire a license for something, they also have a preference for 4K and all that stuff, but they'll buy stuff, anything, even if it's shot on the phone. But they are very picky. To get a phone, let's say a movie that you shot on your phone sold to Netflix, it's got to be an amazing story, and it's got to have a lot of buzz around it, all that stuff. It's got to be a really hot, basically, intellectual property. If you have something that's, let's say a decent film, but it's maybe not like the greatest thing in the world. You can still probably sell it to Amazon, or Netflix, but you gotta, you want to meet their specifications, right? You're gonna give them more reasons to want to get it. So that's what they require. That's what they want, but they're willing to think. But when it comes to original content, I'm saying, guys, stuff that Netflix directly, you could say, produces with a production company, they will not let you, basically use the cameras that don't shoot through 4K. So just keep that in
Another
mind.
question here
Yeah?
from Kevin Carr. In terms of this camera is called the large format. So how does the size compare to the 35 millimeter sensors?
So the basically it's equivalent or almost equivalent to like full frame, basically still photography. So it's kind of like your 5D, cameras, or even 1DX, stuff like that. So it's, or Sony A7S II, for example. So kind of similar to full frame still photography, which is not, super 35 millimeter, which was kind of the standard for the longest time in films. In a way, it still is. It's slightly smaller. It's like sort of like APS-C size image sensor. So you'll notice like these example shots I was showing from the new, Arri LF camera. You'll notice that, not in this shot maybe, but in the shots where there's like a lot of like close-ups or longer lenses, you'll notice that the depth of field is definitely a lot more narrower and a lot more shallower. They do have different shooting modes. I know they have. I don't think they have anything that actually shoots in. And as Super 35, like they don't really crop it. They might add it later on with the firmware, because they do have two mounts for this camera. They have their new large format, basically PL mount, and then they have the standard PL mount, so you can change them out. And that's because they're a shorter flange distance that this camera has now, which is also nice. So they have those things, and I guess you can see here, like, look at this very, very shallow depth of field. So that's something that like I said, that sets this camera apart. And it actually think it might still be a reason why some cinematographers might still not shoot original, let's say, Netflix content or Amazon content on this camera, because it's still not Super 35 4K camera from Arri. I know that that was the biggest request from a lot of cinematographers. The reason is because many cinematographers don't want to use a full frame size image sensor, because so you get the shallower depth of field, but you got to use these specific optics or lenses, and so there's just basically less lenses that you can use, because there's some great vintage glass that a lot of DPs like to use that only cover a Super 35 millimeter image sensor. They will not cover a full frame.
So what are some of the more popular large format lenses?
Well, I mean, Arri has their own line, and now they're actually releasing a whole set of new lenses for this. I know Zeiss has some. I mean, there are lenses, but there's just, I'm gonna say not as many, especially like when it comes to when you go into anamorphics. There's some anamorphics that will not cover this thing. So that's the reason why I know some DPs will still be holding out and not shooting with with this camera. But it's still the right step in the right direction, I would say, for Arri. So the fact that they decided to think, actually technically this camera is actually 4.5K, kind of like the Ursa, because again they're looking at it that when you look at the number of pixels or photo sites you have, and then you have the different red, green, and blue, different sensors on it, and then basically at the end, long story short, the science of it, when to actually derive with a 1-to-1 pixel sharpness, you actually need technically more photo sites and more pixels on your sensor. So that's actually the specifications of the camera. Shoots up to 150 frames per second, which is nothing. Like when you think about it, Arri cameras were never like wow when it comes to like pushing, like I would say the specs. Like when it comes to resolution, they're always behind. Frame rates, they don't have the biggest frame rates and all that stuff. That's not what they're known for. What they're known for is that they with their first camera that they released was that it was, I would say that was the first digital camera that actually looked like film. That was pretty much, you couldn't tell difference, or now I would even say they look better than film, like traditional 35 millimeter film. So and that's actually that's I think one mistake that a lot of filmmakers now do, where they want to kind of relive, I don't know, or want to call themselves real filmmakers, and they go back to shooting on film, and I think there's no reason for it. I mean, the technology has now surpassed that. Like if you want the best image quality, go with Arri. Like when it comes to the color reproduction, the highlights, all that stuff, it's actually matched. The dynamic range is going to be higher and better, and just cleaner overall images than you're going to get with Super 35 millimeter. So that's my take on it. So like I said, this new camera is not revolutionary. It's maybe revolutionary for the fact that Arri finally, after all these years of saying no, resolution doesn't matter. It's all about the dynamic range, color science, all that stuff. They finally were like, their hands twisted and were like, all right, well, we have to, like, we want more of our content, which is a lot of these big projects now are being done exclusively for Amazon and Netflix. So they're like, well, we want our cameras to be used on these shows. And that's the reason why, me and a lot of other filmmakers are guessing what thing. Because as far as I know, I don't think they've admitted to it publicly. They just simply said, here we have a camera that's 4K finally, and it's, I think. So it would be interesting, like for me as a cinematographer, I would also actually like to see, like literally like what they have with their Arri Alexa, the XT, for example, even, like that's a great camera in my opinion. But if they could jump from the 3.2K to an actual like that 4.5K or 4K whatever sensor, if they can do that, I would be very happy with it. I mean, it's like I said, I was already and to be honest, when I've seen projects that were shot in with the original Arri Classic or the XT or XTS cameras, and then they were up-res to 4K. I mean, a lot of times you can't really tell the difference, and it's because also you got to keep in mind. I think a lot of people get stuck on this whole, like, I want perfect sharpness and like, well, I want basically more and more resolution. But the truth is, like Lucas was saying, like even if you're watching stuff on a 4K TV from a certain distance, you're not gonna see those pixels. And not only that, but as a cinematographer, if you shot a lot of stuff, you'll know that a lot of times you don't want things to be super sharp, and that's the reason why we should narrow depth of field. We throw most of the things out of focus and we just focus on one little part of the image, or we're using softening filters, Tiffin FX, soft effects, like things like that, to add certain little glow and softness to the image, or things like that, because it makes your toneland look better. So just the fact that we're doing all those things, that right away that throws the 4K or now 8K with like the red cameras, that resolution out the window. And I think it is kind of dumb trying to always go for the 4K. So in a way, I'm behind Arri, and I do agree with them that resolution is not the most important thing. When you're doing effects and things like that, yes, you want higher resolution, because then you're going to be punching in a lot of times, reframing shots or things like that. That's when it's used for. But when you're just shooting traditional cinema, content, the higher resolution is not necessarily the most important. What's more important is the actual image, the colors, the dynamic range, all that stuff. And then I would say the resolution is like a nice extra thing, but it comes, it's like a thing. But just seeing the fact that we have now finally Arri released this camera, that kind of shows you how much power the marketing side of things and like Netflix and Amazon have, right? So, but anyways, let's get into. We have any more questions? Oh, I believe we lost Lucas here. So let's see here. I'm gonna look online here. I'm like lost without him. Let's see what we have happening up here. And maybe, what, guys, I'm gonna try to get Lucas back online, and I'm gonna show you guys some more examples here that was shot on the Arri camera. By the way, if you want, you can links to all these videos and everything. You can further specs and stuff are in the description of the video, so check that out. And if you have any questions for me, just feel free to ask me, or if you share your opinion or things like that. So, anyways, here's some examples.
If we live
Oh, that's so cute, the bunny. All right, Lucas, so we got any questions?
No, I don't see any questions.
No,
I think
nothing?
we're just at one thing. So I think it would be a good time to go and go into the submissions. So we have only 2 submissions, but they're kind of different than the usual. So
okay, so
might be quite interesting.
What's the first one?
Okay, so the first one is from Lithuania, and it's the filmmaker's name. He's a DP on this project. His name is Nojus Drąsutis, if I'm pronouncing it more or less correctly. And it's like it's an film, not a fictional film, but what's the like experimental film, and yeah, he's a beginning filmmaker, and they decided to shoot it on film, actually 35 millimeters.
Oh my
God. Now the story is about a world before Eve was created, and so let's maybe just play it, and then we'll maybe get a little bit more into in terms of we'll talk a bit more about how the film was made and so on.
All right, sounds good.
Dievas sutvėrė purvą. Dievas pasijuto vienišas. Dievas tarė purvui. Sėskis. Žvelk į visą, ką sutvėriau, tarė Dievas. Į kalnus, vandenis, dangų, žvaigždės. Aš ir buvau tas purvas, kuriam teko sėstis ir apsižvalgyti. Laimė man. Laimė purvui.
So, what do I think? Well, first thing I'm going to tell you right away is, from what I understand, also you're a young filmmaker. I think he said he's 18, right?
He's 18. He's finishing high school.
Yeah, he's finishing high school and that stuff. You're just starting out. Do not waste your resources on film. It's advice. Like if you want to grow as a filmmaker, and let's say you get to a certain level, and later on, because of nostalgia or whatever, you can say creative reasons you want to shoot on film, go for it. But at the beginning, it's like the biggest mistake. For example, I, as a filmmaker, when I was starting out, there were video cameras. They were horrible. We don't have what we have now when it comes to digital cameras. So they were horrible. I was kind of forced to use that. And later on, to get better quality, I had to shoot on film. I didn't want to. It was many places and reasons, why it was a hindrance and it was a thing. But the biggest thing is just it's inconvenient and it's very expensive. So as a filmmaker, if you really grow, you really want to, it's like that whole analogy that that video that I did with Rafi Rivera. He was talking about, the biggest mistakes the filmmakers make, and he was saying that it was the analogy that it was a class dividing, sculpture class, and the teacher divides the class into 2 halves and basically tells one half of the class says, you work for the next 2 months on one sculpture, you make that sculpture perfect. And the other class, he told them, don't worry about quality, just pump out as many sculptures as you can. At the end of the 2 months or whatever, they came back together, looked at it. The side of the class that was working on that one perfect sculpture was all right. I mean, they were tweaking and trying to get better. But the one that did 100 sculptures in that time got way better. The first results were not that good, but the final result was much better. It's just because of experience. And I'll tell you this: film prohibits you to have a lot of experience because, as like you said, and the thing is, it's your submission. It's very expensive, very hard. Especially you're a filmmaker, you're struggling. You're trying to raise money now for your project. And good luck. I hope you raise money for it. But I'll tell you that you'd be better off, like instead of spending thousands of dollars on that film stock and developing it and transfer costs and all that, forget about it. just spend that few $1,000s on a camera, and then that's it. You don't have to spend more money. You have that one good camera. You can get amazing cameras now. Whether it's little DSLR or DSLM type of cameras for $1,000 to cinema camera like the Ursa, for example, camera that I'm using actually right now. But I use a lot of film stuff. $3,000 from $3,500 it goes. You can find used ones for cheaper. So I would say that's where you want to spend your money and resources on. And then just pump out work and experiment, because your submission, it looks nice. There's some nice angles and interesting, I would say, kind of a approach to the story about this whole, Eden, Adam, and Eve, well, minus Eve world and all that stuff. But the thing is that, to me, it wasn't that pleasant looking at some of the shots, seeing excessive, film grain, because it also depends not even so much to you as a filmmaker technically, but you could end up with just a bad-looking image because you're a laboratory, right? Especially if you don't have the money, and now there's very few laboratories left to develop quality film. And if you don't, get the best, technician, they're not going to do a good job developing your film. I've even seen some filmmakers work, like back in the day, they do great work, and then they, put it to a lab, and then they get their footage back, and it's like parts of the negative is scratched and things like that. So you're on the mercy of the laboratory that develops it, all that stuff. There's just so many problems with film. I don't want to get into it, but as a beginner filmmaker, stay away from film. There was like grain. There was like some little noise and scratches in there. I noticed in some of the footage. It's not as clean. I don't think it's as pleasant. And at the end of the day, it's not going to help you tell your story. But get a beautiful digital camera that shows shoots beautiful images. You don't have to worry. You can keep on shooting, experimenting. You can do so many of these films, and you're going to be better off. And like right now, you're raising money for your film because you need to cover all these film stock, expenses. Well, you're going to raise that money, let's say, and like I say, I hope you're successful. But then that's it. You do this one film, and then that money's gone. Whereas, like I said, you take that money, you put it towards a good camera. You shoot this one project. Guess what? Might not work out. We might want to do another project in the future. Get even better. Well, you don't have to ask for money anymore. You have the money now for the gear. So that's the reason why I'm saying stay away from it. Lucas?
Just wanted to mention a couple of things here that in terms of how how the choice of shooting on 35mm, how it influenced the shoot. So they had to shoot 2-to-1 ratio, right? So because they cannot waste film, right? So they had to do lots of rehearsals, and also it is slower to shoot with film than digital, right? And he's saying like in this time of the year in Lithuania they have only like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. daylight. So they have to be. So that's a big.
Film stock is not as sensitive, right? Not like these new cameras. So.
Right. So they have like less time to shoot. So that's why they shot 2 days, and they need to shoot 2 more days. They're trying to raise money for that. So we're going to provide a link in the description. So if you guys want to support them financially, that would be great.
Exactly.
But we wish you all the luck. But yeah, maybe it's something next time. Maybe it's something to think about whether it is the best way for you to gain your experience and so on to shoot on 35mm. Now going back to your point about going for quantity rather than quality. There's actually a pretty cool video I read the article about it, but there's a video from Peter McKinnon. He's a filmmaker from Canada. He's got a popular YouTube channel, and he talks about the same idea, how it's more important is just to get your project done rather than getting to the point where you feel so bad about because your project it's not looking the way you thought it would look, when you got the idea, and so you never finish it. So his message in the video, which we'll also link in the description, is that, just get your project finished. It's way better, and then you'll make it better next time. And I like how he described it in terms of the feelings that you get when you get an idea and then you work on the project. So first is, this is awesome, right? You get the idea, this is awesome, right?
Yeah.
Then you start thinking about it more than, this is tricky, right? Then this is shit. Then I am shit. Then this might be okay. And then this is awesome. Honestly, I felt about our projects like that, many times when,
You go through those stages, yeah.
Yeah. And then it's funny. It's you sometimes feel this is not going to work, and then you look at it, especially if you give it some time, to watch maybe after a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
And then you're like, wow, this is so cool, and why did I focus so much on those things that were not perfect, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a very good way to describe how the emotions, and that's part of like in terms of filmmaking and anything really in life, like how you manage just your emotions is a big thing because yeah, like you at some point you'll feel like what you're doing is maybe not good, like here, this is shit, and then you're going to let it reflect onto you, right? Like it's natural to let it happen, and you feel like you are, you don't have the talent, so. So it's just good to remember that, not to let that affect you and just finish your projects. I really enjoyed Peter McKinnon's message. And okay, so do you want to go to Tom to the second? Second video. Okay, so this one is actually maybe good segment to go to because this this video is a vlog. This is a filmmaker, Gavin Gillett, from Australia, and he lives in this remote place location. So he doesn't really have resources in terms of filmmaking, or doesn't have there are really no other people, I guess, he can collaborate with. And so he's saying he's learning about filmmaking through online, and he's been doing it for a year. And so let's see his vlog from Kimberley. This is like the northern part of Australia, quite beautiful and wild. So let's take a look.
Okay.
How good's that? Bloody beautiful. 7 o'clock. I just hiked the 1.5 k's, I think it is, to get here. And that is what I'm greeted with. It's no one here, it's just me. Fucking awesome. Yesterday I come out late afternoon, it was packed. Right now, there's no one here.
Red eyes, strobe lights moving across the walls. You're looking like a movie star, but I don't know just what you are. Seems like you're tired.
So this is Bell's Gorge. One of the few places you can go swimming without worrying about the big bitey things. I got into Silent Grove campground last night about, 6 o'clock. I was collecting firewood in the dark.
So maybe we can kind of jump in here, Lucas, and I can kind of give maybe my opinion first. There's the location right away. Yeah, it's a beautiful location. It actually makes me want to go there myself. From a technical point of view, I can see you have a gimbal, and there's some nice shots. I even like this, like that where it's flaring with the sun and stuff. What I would say is where this video definitely lacks is two things. Audio, you definitely want to, like, when it comes to your audio, just when you're talking, you want to get better quality, audio. So love yourself or something, especially when you're close to something that's very noisy, like this waterfall. And then the second thing is, like, start off with nice one shot, but then you cut you talking, and then you stay under the long shot where there's some nice moments in it, but then the framing goes completely off, and you're like framing just on your forehead and things like that. For those moments, like, you don't need to stay just because you're talking. You don't need to stay on you talking. I would just say right there was a perfect opportunity to just show like 1 or 2 seconds of you saying, "Oh, hey guys, I'm here," this and that, and then boom. While the rest of it, while you're talking, cut to the beautiful scenery that you have here. You have these nice aerial shots, and aerial is right now so easy to get with these drones, and they right away make everything look kind of more epic. So cut to those aerial shots right away. Another advice when you see this aerial shot, try not to be in the shot yourself. So step away somewhere where you're not going to, because it's a beautiful shot, except you just see you there operating on the corner. So I'm guessing that's you. So, or whatever, the operator is there. So just try to step away so you're not in the shot. You're kind of ruining this beautiful nature shot. But yeah, otherwise, just in editing, like this could have been done while you're talking. I'll put those shots over there and things like that. So you can definitely get better things. But it's good that you're out there. You have equipment that's easy, affordable. You don't have to spend money and thing on film, 35mm film, and just practice. Get shots, go back, edit, do even a few different edits. Like do some quick different edits, different versions. Show it to people and see what the reactions are. Right? Do some where basically maybe there's no shots of you at all, or just nature and music. Just do some other ones like that. That's what filmmaking is about, and that's what technology allows us to do. Is that because of computers, because of cheap cameras, we can experiment and get all these beautiful shots easily, and then pump out different versions of the stuff. So, what do you think?
Well, I guess I wanted to say why there was the reason like we included this video and today is because usually we don't show vlogs, and it's not something we have a lot of experience in. But it's because so many people are doing vlogs, and I do think it's a very interesting way to tell stories, because these are stories, right?
Yeah, I mean,
although
in a way that Peter McKinnon guy, right, that you're talking about, he does vlogs, really. That's mainly what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he makes it look cinematic from what I've seen, like really things. So you can definitely be, I think, visually an interesting filmmaker, right? With vlogs, right?
Yeah, so just like I'm wanted to, I don't know whether I want to see actually just for myself where this whole genre of vlogging goes, because it's a perfect type of storytelling, because even though most vloggers will say that they want to show the real them on screen, but I mean, even if you do that, if you don't try to play up any character, then you're still leaving stuff out. I mean, you're still being editing real life, right? So it's always this creating this image, and at the end, your objective is to get people and have people entertained. And so this is types of storytelling, and I think it's going to keep growing, because I can see how documentaries are also becoming very, are popular. Have been always popular, but I think even more so now, where people sometimes, people do want to see more than just the fiction. They want to see stuff that in real life that they can maybe learn from and so on, or be inspired by. And also, so I think these personal stories, which are vlogs, right? They have a lot of opportunity, and there have been there are some very successful YouTubers vloggers like Peter McKinnon or Casey Neistat. He really kind of revolutionized or kind of shook up the whole idea of vlogging, right? As of making it more cinematic. So I'm kind of looking forward to what people come up with. In terms of storytelling, unfortunately, don't really have an advice in terms of how to do them well. I don't have experience with it, but I don't know whether you want to jump in with any things you've seen from other vloggers and so on that you think work in terms of the storytelling aspects of.
No, I mean, to be honest, I don't have. I'm not the biggest fan, I would say, of vlogging in general. So I don't watch too much vlogging stuff. I mean, I've seen some stuff from Casey Neistat. I met him, and I've seen, for example, just one day when we're at a DJI event, I've seen how he works and stuff. To me, it's a lot of work, very hard.
Well, it's not for everyone. Yeah.
I mean, and I think if it would encroach too much, because many people are asking me, Tom, why don't you vlog? Why don't you show you? It's really, I think it hinders on my creative part, because you're really constantly worrying, instead of doing what the main task is. I think you constantly have to worry about getting these kind of, you could say, behind the scenes of footage of yourself. And then trying to make it look interesting and stuff. Because I've seen a lot of also people who vlog that make it extremely boring. It's just literally just one camera angle and this and that, just walking around and no editing, nothing. Where I think you can really shine with. So like I said, vlogging is one thing, just acquiring that footage. It's very hard. It really, I think, is going to change your lifestyle. So people who say they're vlogging and just showing their lifestyle, I think it's kind of hard to do that for them, because their life is going to change because they have to vlog, right? But the way they put it together, and that's where I think Casey Neistat really stands out. And I think from what I've seen of Peter McKinnon also, they really edit it in such a way that it's not just, like I said, just a guy holding a camera and talking to it. They do take the time to get other angles, and then they edit it in a creative way with music and things like that, and graphics. So that's where it really stands out. For me, I mean, I'll tell you that there are people that I follow online, on YouTube especially, that are not really, I'm not going to qualify them as filmmakers, because they don't care at all from the technical side of things or creative in terms of how the images look or how the sounds and stuff. But what I find interesting about them is just, and like I said, and those videos might be, because they're not technically well done, they might be horrible for somebody else, they might be horribly boring. It's just literally, it's something that interests me. It's they're into something that thing. So, for example, lately I got into, I'm planning to go across America and stuff with my family, and got into RVing. Got actually my first RV vehicle and stuff like that. We're going to be traveling with my family, and I just was looking on YouTube and stuff like that because I wanted to make some changes to my RV. So basically, what happened, long story short, is the whole algorithms and everything, AI that all those companies now, Google and everybody has. everywhere I go now, YouTube, Facebook, whatever, everything that pops up is RV this, RV life, van life, this, like all these things. And I didn't even know there was this whole other world, so I just by accident started clicking this and that. And some of these videos are, like I said, very crude from a technical point of view, but I find them super interesting because it's that world. It's like I want to experience that world, you know, like in this case, let's say RVing and going and exploring America in that way. And I'm finding out all these interesting things from these people. And a lot of these videos are just literally, you know, like there's one guy who puts his camera on a little tripod, you know, and he stands in front of his RV and just talks for like an hour. And they're not really videos that I'm like gonna sit there and watch and stuff, but like while I'm working, doing something where I can just even, it's almost like a vlog, like I mean, what do you call it? Not vlog, but whatever, you know, you're listening to the audio. Just that, like literally I'll just play it.
Podcast, like a podcast.
Yeah, like a podcast. Yeah. And I just listen to it in the back, and then ever so on, when they show some cutaway to some shot, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So that's what I find where I think a lot of the stuff is going, where I think almost everybody is going to be sharing their life. Because like I said, we all do things that somebody else will find interesting. You know, there might not be things that will ever get, you know, financed to be on some big, you know, TV show or whatever. And that's why, like those reality TV that you see on shows, a lot of it is played up and kind of scripted in this, because it has to be kind of larger than life for the marketer and for the, you know, sponsors and stuff to kind of make sense. But where the stuff I think that's really interesting is what's kind of emerging on the internet is where people just share their everyday life, things that, you know, won't ever get a huge audience of millions or hundreds of millions of views, but they'll get still a few hundred or 1,000 views, let's say. And because those are another few hundred or 1,000 people that find it interesting, and they'll just watch it, and they'll, you know, you can connect, you can even make relationships this way. I mean, I've seen actually watching those RV videos where one guy was watching another guy's videos, and they just became, you know, they were watching each other's videos basically on YouTube, and then they started in the comment section. They said that they were like, oh, I'm gonna be, you know, parking my RV and so, and then this guy's like, oh, I'm in the area, I'll go over there, and then they met up and they did a video together. So like, and then became friends, from what I understand. So it's kind of interesting how that I think is going to connect people. And so again, that's the good thing about technology, is it allows people to get, like you see here, Gavin had these nice shots with the gimbal or the drone, because these are things now that anybody can get and learn to use for, you know, so it's not that hard technically. Now, if Gavin wants to pursue his work as a filmmaker, I would advise just do more work, but actually concentrate, not just showing, you know, the nice pretty shots and stuff, but like I said, it's kind of telling a story, making these vlogs into kind of a story, even if it's based on real life, but you know, or sometimes maybe you play it up or something, or just the way you edit it, make it creative in the editing with the music and things like that, make it feel more like visually appealing kind of thing. That's where I think those people are going to stand out, right? I think so. I mean, that's the thing is, I think there's definitely I think vlogging or just people sharing their life in general, I think is a great thing. Especially if they don't do it for vanity, you know what I mean, or just like they're just doing it because they literally go like, oh, you know, I find this interesting, and maybe somebody else who has the same interest as me, you know, get in touch with them and thing. So that's the cool thing about, I think, doing the stuff online, and can definitely be taken to the next level by just looking more, you know, at it from a technical point of view. But it's not necessary, you know, always. So.
Yeah, in terms of like the only thing I guess I could say in terms of the story part is like, yeah, I don't really know how to do vlogging where it becomes a business where you can support yourself off, but I like the way for me what the interesting thing about vlogging is when you're doing something you're passionate about, right? So you're, and then basically that the important thing is so that the vlogging doesn't get in the way of what you really want to do, what you're passionate about. Exactly. So if you're doing something about they're passionate about, and then ever so often you can make a video, or maybe like Gary Vee, for example, he's got somebody filming him, right? So he doesn't really, you know, in editing, so he can still do, you know, he's got a bigger, you know, company and so on. But anyway, like if you can follow your passion, do it, and then the videos actually can enhance what you're doing, because you know, being filmed, being shown, and the camera does open up the doors. So that is, I mean, even if you're not even like making money of it, I know, like from personal experience, we've been able to go to so many places just because we had a camera, right, and we're filming some project. So this is really cool if you're doing something passionate, and then you put some of that, your time and some of your effort into like sharing it. There's a lot of benefit to it, even though for most people, it will never lead to a situation where it's a business where you can support yourself of it. But that's really the cool thing. Where that's, I think, for me, is the ultimate. But I haven't done it, vlogging because of that thing, because of the reason that it would always get into me doing what I really want to do. But if you can find a way and be a kind of, I guess, develop the filmmaking skills so you can still shoot quickly, and part of it is having the equipment, that allows you to do it. So there's more and more equipment where that's lighter, smaller, that allows you to work quicker, make the process simpler, so that this way you can still follow your passion, do what you really care about, but then still share it, because that's going to be, that's very rewarding, first of all, to share it. But also there's all these benefits, even though you're not going to build up a big audience, it's still, there's so many benefits. You'll be able to do more things because you'll be connecting with other people, right? So I see a lot of potential there in the future. Okay, so there's a few questions, Tom. I actually got some trash talk here because I said there were no questions. So if you guys we don't answer your questions, you can repost them in the chat. So this way we can get to them, because it's easy to miss questions. Here from Abel Wondwassen, he says, Tom, can you talk about the color space difference, or different, he wrote, between film and digital cameras?
There's a lot of technical things that I'm not going to claim that I know all of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'll tell you this, from the, just when you look at even the from the technical wizards at Arri and stuff. But, I personally, I really like, for example, the Ursa, also color science, Ursa Mini. I think you're never going to get, because there's this discussion or thing where people are like, well, film was always better, is different, or the digital is never going to be the same. And it's never going to be the same. And just like when you take two different cameras now, two different digital sensors, they're never going to be the same. You can try to match them in post and all that stuff with the color grading. You can definitely get very close, but even then, there's going to be some differences. Might just not be noticeable to most people. When it comes to film, like I said, I think we're past the days where you got to say, you can basically say that film is still king and has the best colors or all that stuff, because like I said, because it doesn't. Like now, there's technically you can shoot more color information, more bits of color, you could say, and it's kind of hard to compare because film is analog. It's a piece of basically chemicals on a piece of basically plastic that are being exposed and everything. But I mean, when you look at it, at the end of the day, pretty much the last films that were still shot or being shot right now on film, at the end of the day, they're all being scanned digitally, and so that process in itself, in a way, loses a lot of quality and things like that. So I mean, and at the end of the day, you end up with a digital image. So in my point of view, it's sort of like it's gonna look different always, film and digital, and especially it depends on which digital camera too. But I think as a lot of great films have already shown, you can shoot amazing work that looks amazingly thing, and you can do stuff that you could never do with film because of the fact that you can shoot into much lower, basically light. That's why I think digital is the way to go, and film is kind of, like I said, it's like this fun thing that like big filmmakers, filmmakers with a lot of money do when they want to indulge themselves and feel like filmmakers again, but because they're shooting on film. But that's really the only reason why. It's not because of technical reasons. So.
Okay, Tom, how does the Red Raven compare to the Ursa?
The Raven has some nicer specs than the Ursa, but in general, it's you have one mount, right? You have the Canon EF mount. I find and basically what you're paying for, two times what actually, when you get everything for it, so it's actually workable. Paying almost more like 3 times the amount that Ursa. So it's basically 3 times as expensive almost, or 2.5 times as the Ursa. And at the end of the day, it's a nice image. I'm not gonna say that that it isn't, but I still find that the dynamic range is, I guess it was technically by half a f-stop supposed to be better on the Raven. But to be honest, the color science, even personally, it just comes down to preference. You might disagree with me, but I think it looks better on the Ursa than on the Raven, and especially when you bang for buck, when you compare it for the cost, and then the fact that Raven is not as well suited for recording audio. You can record audio, but it's not as good functions when it comes to the media that we're recording on. It's a lot more expensive, not as versatile, and the things like where you can just like, let's say you're somewhere in a third world country or something, and you need to access the, go to a camera store and pick up more media. Well, you can't really do that with the Red Raven, whereas you can do that with the Ursa Mini Pro. So you can record on SD cards even. So that's the thing. It gives you more options, more things. I think bang for the buck, I think the Ursa is better, but it's not to say that the Raven isn't a great image quality. It is. It's just, I would say if I had the money, I would spend a lot less on the Ursa Mini Pro, and then spend the rest of the money that I would have spent on the Raven and put it towards my production. So whatever's in front of the camera. But yeah, they're very similar. At the end of the day, if you didn't care about money, they're very similar in quality. But the Ursa still just gives you more options. Like when it comes to, you can have swappable mounts, different more recording formats, more recording media, that type of stuff.
Okay, going back to the Arri, the new one, the LF. How do its features compare to their competitors? Who are the competitors that people would usually consider when they're renting these big budget cameras?
Yeah, it's feature-wise, again, I would say almost the same as right now. I kind of set Raven to the thing, to Ursa. It doesn't have as many features. Like I said, it shoots up to 150 frames per second. That's only in the Arri RAW. It's nothing. It's not going to wow you when you look at like the red
specs.
Red specs, for example. You can shoot all 300 frames and over an hour. And so, spec-wise, it's not great, but really what it comes down to, and why a lot of DPs like that look, is because the one thing that Arri always had, even though they didn't, like I said before, they didn't even have the resolution, is they just had the overall, the quality of the image. Just looked very filmic, if you want to say it that way, very close to what people used to shoot on film. So the highlights, definitely, they really nailed it down, where a lot of big problems with digital is, the highlights just gets to certain points where it's outside of the dynamic range of the camera, and the highlights just clip, and you get this harsh, basically, highlights. Whereas the Arri really, the dynamic range is wide, but it's not necessarily the widest right now. But they really, the way they treat the highlights, they'll roll it off where it, because of that, feels less digital. So that's the really nice thing. And just overall, the texture, the colors of it, it's not the best when it comes to low light camera. It doesn't have the best frame rates, like when it comes to slow motion. It doesn't have the best resolution. So it doesn't have a lot of these best things, yet it's a very expensive camera. But what it really comes down to is, and so that's like when you're a beginner filmmaker, I would say that's not a camera you want to look at. Definitely not buy it, maybe rent it if you're doing like a big project that I can't afford to do that. But it really just comes down to more, if you're already, if you're going for that very cinematic kind of look that's been used in a lot of these big budget films, because Arris have been used on these really, really big projects, then that's the camera that you want to go for. It feels very, I would say, almost organic. Even when you're shooting in low light and you get that grain and stuff, it kind of feels almost less digital, more like you're shooting on film and stuff. So that's the great thing about it. Now, if you're doing a lot of things with special effects and things like that, that's where, you can always add the grain and other things like that. I would say that's where probably you want to shoot with, like, the Monstro, for example, Epic, Red, with the 8K sensor and stuff like that, because you want the cleanest, biggest pixel, image when you're doing special effects, especially. But otherwise, I would say that's what Arri has, right? That might kind of makes them stand out above the other competition, which would be mainly the Red cameras.
Here from comment from Matthew Mantega. And by the way, if you guys want me to mention your names, like when you're asking questions, it's good if you mention either your user ID has your name, or if you can write it in your comment, because it's pronouncing some of those user IDs is a bit tricky and not very interesting. So from Matthew here, the 2K Alexa was beyond enough for Netflix originals. That 4K discrimination was crap decision for the Netflix to begin with. I would choose RAW codec over 4K resolution any day. So it's a comment. So what do you think, Tom?
Well, okay. So again, it comes down to like I said, image quality was beautiful on the Arri cameras. Even the Arri Classic that shoots, basically 2K or whatever, 1080. It's beautiful images, and there's some amazing work that's been shot on it. I'm not saying that that's like, oh my God, you need 4K or now 8K. I'm not saying that. Doing special effects, there's advantages to that, but that's a different thing. But when it comes to shooting the whole film, no, I don't think you need to shoot it. Netflix did it purely because of a marketing thing. I think anybody who kind of spends a little time looking at it, that's what it was. they wanted to stand out above the Hollywood studios and above, basically they wanted to get people from stop watching, going to cinema, and to just stay home and be like, hey, you can comfortably watch amazing quality, even better than many films being projected in cinema, right in your house. And they basically did it by, it's like, the salesperson at Best Buy. What, the biggest number, the biggest thing. So, 4K was like the pushing it, right? Everybody was shooting 1080p. Netflix, Amazon were like, nope, we're doing everything in 4K, our original stuff. So once you make that statement and then you start charging people for exclusive 4K content, you can't then suddenly go and be like, well, this stuff is not really 4K, but we're gonna up-res it and make it look like it. No, because then, like I said, most people won't care, but there'll be some people who are gonna be jump on them and gonna be like, well, Netflix, what the hell? Like, you're charging me extra money for 4K stuff, then I find out that you're taking stuff that was shot in 3.2K or 2.8 whatever, 8K when it comes to the early Arri cameras, and then you're just pumping it out there and claiming it's 4K when it's not. Why do you lie for us? Why are you charging us extra money for this? That's really the only reason. They don't want, because they made this marketing decision. 4K is going to be the way to go. That's how we're going to stand out. That's how we're going to market it. That's how we're going to get extra money from people. So because of that, we're going to have to deliver 4K stuff. Even if, let's say, there was a camera that was 4K but didn't look as good as the Arri that wasn't 4K, well, they still had to go 4K because they didn't sell people on, oh, we have these beautiful cinematic looking images because they're shot on the Arri thing. Because most consumers don't care about that stuff. But if you tell a consumer, here's something that, here you can watch regular stuff 1080p and here you can watch 4 times the resolution of HD, people are like, wow, that's better. Okay, it's simple marketing. It works for people.
You cannot argue with numbers, right?
Exactly. That's really what it is. So that's the reason why Netflix did it. So.
Okay, here a question: do you think HDR will be a phase like 3D was, or do you think it will become the standard?
What do you mean 3D was? 3D still is here.
I think so too.
I just have a 3D TV and I have a 3D projector. Yeah. I just barely watch anything 3D.
But well, I think for cinemas, it's still there. I do it's fun. Some films I do choose to watch in 3D, right?
Yeah, like I'll tell you this, not for everybody, because I know some people get sick and stuff. Like literally their vision stuff can't handle it. But if you I enjoy watching 3D on a big screen. When I have the 3D TV, it's fun, but it's not the same because it's like the smaller screen and things. So it's not never the same. But I think that's what, like I said, is it's going to bring people to cinema to watch stuff in 3D. But it also has to be a good film, so later on we can just watch it on regular 2D. Is HDR going to be the same thing? I don't think so, because it's literally HDR. What it really is kind of what made Arri stand out for the longest time. First, it was just they had the highest dynamic range, so because of that, the highlights automatically looked better. And they kept improving the highlights and stuff like that. That's really what HDR is. And soon it's going to get to a point where, because you're still, as a human, like our eyes can see that, much wider dynamic range than what digital cameras can capture. So I think what's really going to happen is just, people will probably get to a certain point when it comes to resolution where you might get 20K, 80K, whatever, displays, and then people will be just like, I don't care anymore. Like, it just makes no difference. It's all looks the same, right? Because it's just so many pixels you can pack per square inch, and just people are not going to care. And nobody's going to have a TV the size of, like a movie theater display. So, so because of that, the resolution itself will reach a peak where it won't go any higher. And then the next thing people will be is just basically the higher HDR, basically a higher dynamic range. So I think that is going to stick around. And, even now, like when it comes to computer, like when it comes to gaming, the games that are rendered in higher HDR, they just look better. They're a thing. And it's something that most people can't tell. But again, if you can put a number on it, and that's kind of how it's being marketed, even though it's not technically exactly there, but they'll tell you HDR 13, whatever, 14, whatever, how many, whatever stops that they can display. And it's going to get to a point, I think, where it's going to be, like, supposedly, again, it's supposedly a scientific test that people are doing, but it gets very subjective because it depends on different people who have different eyesight. But human eye on average can see, like, at the same time, we can recognize around 20 to like 25, I think it is, to up to all the way to 30 stops of light. One stop of light, going up is the doubling amount of light, going down is halving the amount of light. So that's a really big range. Our camera still can't capture that much. So I think it's going to get to a point where, again, you're going to have this HDR that can be basically capture the same basically range of bright to dark as our eyes can. And it is going to look nicer. It's just going to look less digital, less whatever, right? It's going to look pretty much like real life almost, especially once the resolution's there and thing. But again, it's going to have its limits, because then there's going to be certain HDR where it's just not going to there's going to be no sense because our eyes can't sense it, right? So that's the thing. So is it a gimmick? It's always all of those things, whether it's resolution, 3D, HDR, those are all tools being used to sell merchandising, and that's really what it is. When it's mainly selling the TVs, but also now selling the cameras and things like that. But they are useful. They're going to stick around. 3D, maybe because it's such a hard thing to consume, because you need those glasses and things. That's not something very convenient. But I think 3D is going to come back, and you're going to be surprised a little bit because of the new displays now that are being developed. And I've seen some of it early on, and it looks amazing. It's still not all the way there, but it's already wows me, where you don't need any glasses. So you're looking at something, and it's like, imagine like holding your phone. And there's going to be phone displays that are going to be able to show it to you right there, and it's going to look almost like a holograph. So 3D is going to come back in that way. Now there's going to be some stuff where people won't care about it, right? Like when back in the day, painters did paintings, they were flat, and everybody just admired the painting for what it was. And then there were sculptors who excelled and created art in 3D form because it was, they showed different things. So 2D is not going to go away, but 3D, there's going to be more 3D content, I think, that's going to be just displayed holographically. That I think people it's going to be then easier, right? Because you don't need glasses. It's just you can look at it and be like, oh, that's cool, and you can look from sides, and stuff like that. Admire the work. So that's going to be a cool thing about it. And the same thing when it comes to HDR. It's just the more lifelike it's going to look, yeah, people are going to go for it. And so because of that, manufacturers are going to use it to market it. Like I said, right now the HDR is not that much of a difference. Like when you look at standard video, how much the dynamic range it has, and then the HDR, how much really the dynamic range of the display, they're not that big. So at least for the content, like video content, the games, you can see in the games it makes a big difference. Like anybody who's a big gamer and you playing, and you have a display that has HDR and you turn it on, tell me, that I'm lying, but like, that you disagree with me, because I think then in that case, I don't know. We have to have a big discussion, because I've seen it with my own eyes and I've seen the difference. It makes the video games that much more realistic, more enjoyable. So I think it's going to be around.
Like, there are a couple of questions, but I think one of them for sure would be good to address actually in a future show. Just want to mention it from Ben's Jaworski Harkashi. He says he would want to find he would like some technical tips in terms of how to shoot a reality show, like a tracker and logger shows that you can see on Discovery Channel with a low budget. So maybe we can talk about some of the maybe this type of production and maybe other types of productions like for television. Maybe we can share some tips in the future.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can answer right now. And another question that I'm not sure if you can answer it right now pretty quickly before my kids get here and start ruckus, then we can go for it. But otherwise, maybe in the future. From the NP guy, he says, technically speaking, how would you shoot a short film with an iPhone 8? Any lenses or general tips? So in terms of like shooting a film project on a phone, do you want to talk about it now or in the future?
Very quickly. I mean, just get the phone, and there's some good apps which allow you more control over the camera, and you have basically a full manual camera, and the sensors on the iPhones are great. You can shoot it like that. If you want to take it to the next step, there's many people who've been doing it already online. One guy is Devin Supertramp. You can check out his channel. He did stuff where he actually used, I think, Samsung phones, I think technically, but it doesn't matter. Just use the phone. And there's adapters where you can use other lenses. You can have wide angle, this and that, or you can even put film lenses on it. Like you can even put PL lenses if you want it. You can get those, and then with those adapters, or with the wide angle telephoto adapters, you can get different focal lengths, and you can shoot stuff. And like I said, I've seen stuff where I was like, wowed. Now you're still gonna need things like a good little adapter so you can put your phone on a tripod and just get a good tripod. Adapter so you can let's say attach it to a drone or things like that if you wanted to. Although in that case I would just say all these drones have great cameras built into them. Just use those cameras. You don't have to shoot everything on a phone. But there's that's some of the ways of things. So if you want to see kind of Devin Supertramp or Devin Graham, check out his YouTube channel, especially his second YouTube channel where he has the behind the scenes. He shows how he did that. And there's a few other filmmakers. If you search on YouTube, you'll find behind the scenes of how they kind of rig their phones up to be able to shoot on a phone. So that's it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, so we'll see each other next week.
Yep. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye
See you
now.
Next week.
Bye now.